Hi everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for the month of July 2019. So this is your sun and rising sign horoscope for Capricorn. I'm going to go ahead and put the chart up so you can check it out along with me. You might notice I'm not in my office right now. I am on vacation at my mom's place with my family and spending some time here for the 4th of July. So I'll be broadcasting these horoscopes this month and a few other videos for this week's eclipse from here in my guest room studio. So, all right, let's take a look at how the eclipses are affecting you, in particular if you're a Capricorn sun or rising. You're going to notice that the eclipse on July 2nd, new moon solar eclipse, happening in your 7th place, which is the house of marriage and relationships. Long story short is that a new moon brings new beginnings, and a solar eclipse, it makes it very strong and very powerful, and the sign of Cancer indicates a turning point, right? So you're thinking about a very new, powerful turning point, a new beginning, in a moment of serious change in the house of relationships, love, and marriage. And that's going to be coming in the next couple of months. It doesn't happen right away on the day of an eclipse. It takes several moon cycles usually to really start playing out. Plus, you're going to have repeat of these eclipses during the winter. So you think probably the next 6 months to a year to really watch this emphasis on changes in the relationship house coming through. Now, the 7th house is also a place that pertains to endings. This is the place where planets set. So kind of almost sounds contradictory, right? You have new beginnings and a major turning point in the house of love relationships. But the 7th house also is a place where planets set and disappear in the west, and hence represents finishing something. So when you put all of that together and then weigh that against the eclipses that are going to be coming in your 1st house, one of the simplest things we can say, unfortunately, is just really generic, right? It's like you have major endings and beginnings right now. And these are the reason that they're not just any old beginning and ending is because they're happening in such critical places in the birth chart. And they pertain specifically with the eclipse at the beginning of the month in Cancer to mostly to your relationships, your intimate partnerings, whether they're with a lover or potentially even a business partner. New relationships being formed right now, potentially due to an ending somewhere else in your life or some kind of critical turning point that you're reaching in your life. So that's the first big transit of the month. Now, if we go forward from there, the next major transit of the month is going to take place between July 8th and July 9th. And that's going to be the conjunction of Mercury and Mars in Leo, which is taking place in your 8th house. And that's happening just as Mercury is turning retrograde between the 8th and the 9th, and both are happening in a square to Uranus. So this is a really dynamic Mercury retrograde period, probably filled with some degree of unexpected shocks, surprises, and maybe even some events that are a little bit more jolting or that may interrupt your flow a little bit more. Why? Because Mars is the god of war and strife. Mars likes to cut, divide, sever. And when you get Mercury and Mars together, a lot of times you see people breaking out of contracts, or you see people breaking agreements. Agreement or contract being Mercury, Mars being the cutting or severing or dividing. You add in the topic of Uranus and you get the topic of something sudden, something erratic, something that disrupts. And also Uranus, also a lot like Mars, sometimes called the higher octave of Mars, Uranus also has a tendency to make something more independent. So this energy has the potential to really be about independence. Now, you got to be careful that the ego isn't too heavily involved in this one, because it can be about, a big ego, a big reaction, the need to defend or be on top or be number one, and the way that can really create some disruptions. So you think about liberation, emancipation, freedom, doing things your own way, but also be careful being willful, domineering, bossy, contentious with power struggles. Those are all themes to watch around this particular Mercury retrograde. The other themes that could come up would be in the 8th house, themes that are related to death, karmic penalties or debts. I know those are all kind of heavy. Fear and anxiety about the future. Also, just worry and paranoia about stuff. You'd be really careful of those energies. Also, spouse's money, income, resources, or business, which are not necessarily heavy topics, but given that there's Mercury, Mars, at the time of a retrograde square to Uranus, don't be surprised if there are some disruptions or some sudden changes or unexpected shifts in relation to a partner's job or a partner's income or something like that. So those are some general themes or topics that you might see coming up around the Mercury retrograde between July 8th and the 9th. Now, from there, we go through this like 11-day window between the 10th and the 21st. And during that window, the big thing that's happening is both the Sun and Venus between the 10th and 21st are going to go through oppositions to Saturn and Pluto, from Cancer in the 7th to Capricorn in the 1st. During that time on the 16th, you're also going to get a lunar eclipse in Capricorn in your first house. All right, so let's try to put all that together. First of all, we're talking about the axis that deals with the self, you, your body, your health, your sense of independent reality, versus your relationships, the place where you merge or think of yourself more in terms of a we rather than a me. And so those two areas of your life, they're just maybe in dynamic tension right now. You're evolving, you're changing, you're growing, you're becoming more maybe independent, or you're having to face or deal with things that are personally more challenging, while also being asked to tend to the needs and sometimes even the newness of a relationship. So a lot of tension between these two areas. Now, the other thing that comes up is this kind of emotional balance between being stoic, serious, focused, determined, kind of earthy Capricorn energy, ambitious, hardworking, and then this call over in the 7th house with all the Cancer energy saying, why don't you invest yourself in relationships at a deeper level, become more emotionally vulnerable or available, think more about someone else and less about yourself, right? On the other hand, what do you do if you're with someone who's just incredibly needy and you need to draw boundaries and just really take care of yourself, or really do whatever you need to do right now, whether that's work or personal care or whatever. You also have to be careful with the lunar eclipse on July 16th in your first house, a little bit more vulnerable time for your health. Your health could be, more of a soft spot right there. And I say that also because with Saturn and Pluto heavily in the mix, that facing personal limitations, trying times personally, it could be exhausting, draining, depressing, but having to work through them. It's also maybe feeling like you're at a place in your life right now where you need to say no to something, or a door needs to close, or an ending needs to happen. And that's because of the lunar eclipse in your first house, which represents culmination, completion, and closure. And it's of a Saturn-Pluto kind, which typically would mean really relinquishing something, letting something go, time to say goodbye to something, or doing something that you have to do, that you must do, that's necessary. So, a lot of intense energy this month for Capricorns and Cancers. If you're Cancer Sun, Capricorn Sun, Cancer Rising, Capricorn Rising, these are the two signs that are getting hit the heaviest this month. The transformation, of course, can be very positive and constructive overall. It has a lot to do with how you meet it. You want to make sure that you're not being too closed off, hard, walled in, serious, etc. You want to open yourself up emotionally, let other people help you. Take advantage of the emotional bonds in your life this month to be a part of your process. But at the same time, if something's sucking you dry and you really need to focus on yourself and not get drawn into something, and just be wise and know the difference. So then we go forward from that broad period of time that takes place between the 10th and the 21st to the last major transit of the month that I'm tracking this month, which is the new moon in the sign of Leo. And that's taking place in your 8th house again, with a close conjunction to Venus, and then again square to Uranus. Now, this new moon in Leo that comes at the very end of the month is giving you kind of like it's giving you a sense of what the entire month of August will bring with it. It's giving you a little bit of a preview, but it's also repeating the themes that we talked about earlier with Mercury, Mars, and Uranus at the earlier in the month, between like the 8th and 9th of July. So the 31st, you've got this new moon in the 8th house, bringing up again the themes of death, anxiety, fear of the future, different kinds of debts or karmic bills that are due. Not an easy house. Also, however, the topics of joint financial endeavors, or a spouse's money or inheritance, or a spouse's business. So all of those different topics may be in the spotlight. Particularly, again, with Venus there, maybe related to love, relationships, sexuality. Those themes could be really important. Square to Uranus, the potential for some real disruption. You're going to be really careful, again, that your ego isn't getting too kicked up and defensive. You could easily sort of bail on relationships in your life if you feel too easily slighted or offended, or if others are feeling that way right now. So be careful. The overwhelming need for creativity or something original or different or sort of outside of the box could maybe compromise your relationships a little bit as well. So you just want to be really careful about that. So the other thing that I'll bring up here would be the need for some kind of creative release, but being careful that it's not an unhealthy form of creative release or sexual release, or seeking pleasure or joy or fun, but in a way that doesn't end up being costly or destructive. Those are also themes that kind of come up, or maybe around the end of the month and carrying you into August a little bit. There's more to say about that. We'll come back for more on the themes of August for next month's horoscopes. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and that you'll tell me some of your stories about the eclipses. Leave some of your comments in the feed and tell me how the eclipses turn out for you. And we'll see you again, Capricorns, next month. All right, take care. Bye.